for being here as well. So you're a visual artist.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So just to begin with, could you just give us a bit of an introduction as to who you are and what you do from a general sense?
Yes, so the name is Eugene Ankomah, also known in the media and to some people as EA. And I am a visual artist, meaning traditionally, as we know, visual artists paint, draw, sculpt. And in our modern contemporary times, we create installations. We can do stuff through fashion. So I'm a combination of all of these things. So yeah, I'm perhaps mainly known to be a person who paints from childhood, but my work has gone through many different types of changes. And I keep expanding what I do as a visual artist, but I'm expanding what it means to be a visual artist, but I'm also expanding um, what is possible for one to do as an artist. So all of these things are very important to me, and my work goes in different directions in terms of the themes that I treat and the things that are that concerns me.
Mm. So what was it that drew you initially to art or visual art? What was it? Was it something specific you saw in childhood, or was it more something that you thought, that's something I want to go into because you saw someone who was a visual artist that attracted you to it? So what was it that drew you to that area
Yeah,
of work?
great question. Great question. So when I'm asked this question, I always think backwards, and I do not have a particular time when I decided to become an artist. It always seems to be there. Like
Mm,
it always seems to have existed inside me somehow. And and so I cannot even recollect a time when I wasn't drawing or making stuff or being interested in color and shapes and scribbling. There's no such memory. So it always feels as if it's always been there. Um, so there was no start and there was no decision. I just continued with what I knew best. And it was through other people seeing my work as a child, being amazed by it, that I then realized that I was actually good at it. But otherwise, I was always doing it. I guess just like how many kids like to scribble, but it's just that I never stopped.
mm. Right. So it's always so it's an inherent passion that has
That's,
always resided within itself. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I've always found with those of us who are more creative
Mhm.
and more artistic
Yeah.
that lean towards that side of the brain,
Yes.
it's always quite hard to pinpoint that actual time that drew you to that. It's something that's always, yeah, I agree.
I
That's always
agree.
been there.
I agree.
You can't, it's different in more of the analytical sense, but with the
Yeah.
creative
Yeah.
feel, it's something cannot, you cannot put a finger on, can you?
I totally agree.
So just before we get deeper into your whole artistic um, creations and your projects and what you do, what do
Yes.
you currently do at the moment in
Um,
general for like a day, thing like that?
yeah. So I am most of the time putting projects together, um, or I'm making paintings for exhibitions. Um, and I like to create, or I've been creating specific projects that allows, that allows myself to work with young people using art as a way to open doors to life, if you like, and to help
Mm,
sort of free them in terms of who they are, what they can do. So I guess what I'm partly talking about here is inspiration, because I realize that my art has had a great effect on young people for many years. So it became a bit of a wish of mine to use it to really help them, if you like, and to help them release. So to go back to your question, I am constantly making paintings for exhibitions. I'm writing proposals. I'm doing press, um, or I'm working with other people in collaboration with other people to put what do you call it, like funding bits together, to get more money for my projects, so that I can push things into the community. Yeah, all of that.
So you're using your art as a force for good to, I guess, as you mentioned, inspire young people, inspire the communities that they live in, that you're in, to
Definitely,
continue to have a message.
definitely.
And what message that you're trying to inspire in these young people?
So I realize that we live in a world that forces a lot of people, be it directly or indirectly, to be a certain way or to follow certain paths. And of course, it works in some ways, or for some people, and for a lot of people, it doesn't work. And it might not work because it might not be the thing that naturally pulls them towards it. It might not work
Mm,
because invariably it might not be their talent, it might not be their mindset. So the educational system, for example, as we know, whichever part of the world you go to is structured in a certain way, but not everybody fits. So I came to realize that that whole process does steal the individual's identity and their, in a sense, God-given power. And what I have done with my art, especially in the way I present myself, the projects that I create, is to do it in such an individual, bold way, and to inspire people to make them, or to encourage them to also find their own voice. Um, and the reason why this is important to me is because I truly believe when you find your voice or your identity through whatever it is you do or make, life becomes easier. And in fact, you are more potential, or potentially you become a solution to the issues and the problems of the world. But if we veer off this path, which is the individual unique voice that has been given to you or to us, then not only are we left frustrated, but I think there are more issues in the world which we could have contributed to or solved, which never get solved because we never found ourselves in order to move in that path. So, and I'm going a little bit deeper here, but I think my art is kind of the introduction to this. And I like to help people release, like I said, to find themselves. And I think if you can help somebody or anybody find themselves with art, or through, in my case, obviously art, I think they can walk off and be free in whatever it is they want to do.
mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I think it's quite hard, isn't it? Because I understand from my own experience that the educational system
Yes,
isn't fit and built for everyone. I I do firmly believe that the education system is needed, but I think the
mm,
structure, as you mentioned, only
yeah,
supports a certain type of thinker.
of
And
course.
when you are quite divergent in your thinking,
Yes,
um, hard for you to express certain things in a manner that the education system tries to align you to express them. So you're
absolutely.
restricted, and
Yes,
that leads most of us more, and us are more who is it right-brained artistic,
of
tend
course.
to I vocalize and display it in a different way, in a more artistic way, which is why we're more aligned to stuff like drama and music and all of
Agreed.
these types of different art.
That's right.
So what is it that you currently do with some of these young people to help them, number one, find their inspiration, but number two, create, I'm assuming, pieces of work that display the things that they need to display or get out that has been locked in?
Sure. So one of the most important things to me is that I present myself in the way that I need to, or that I want to, as a way of letting people know, or letting young people know that, look, here I am. And of course, I'm aware that it leads to questions, which I'm always happy to answer. Because I think with understanding comes a better psychological comfortable place that allows other people to understand why we do certain things. So I like answering questions when young people ask me questions about why I do what I do, why I paint, what am I paint, why am I dress up, all of these things. Um, so I'm usually invited to colleges or schools to give a speech or to present my work. And that often starts from my early works, which were more kind of, traditional, realistic type paintings. And what tends to happen is this gives the audience or young people a better understanding that, Eugene did not just end up, did not just wake up one day and just
Mm,
end up the way he looks or doing what he does, but actually it started way back for various reasons.
mm,
And he's here now because of the journey and because of his experiences. And that whole narrative, that story, I think is really, really important, because it's really important that we allow young people to understand that everything takes time. And
mm,
that, the thing that you want to be or the thing that you're meant to be isn't going to happen overnight. And therefore be patient with yourself and with the journey. So that whole thing is really, really important in my presentations. Secondly, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, um, as you might know, in London, London has a serious knife crime problem. And it's taken so many, wonderful, innocent lives. Um, of course, we understand the whole situation behind gangs and whatever, but there are also a lot of innocent lives, who have been, whose lives have been cut short out of just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Um,
mm,
and that whole situation seriously affected me, and it really got me thinking. And I just didn't want to sit back and not do anything. So, you know, um, thinking about it for several months, I slept and had a dream, and came out of the dream, and there was a whole scene that was created in my mind, and it looked like a memorial scene and all of these things. So I'm talking about my project Reclaim. And so you can imagine, I grabbed, my materials and feverishly started sketching things down and writing meanings, what this meant and what that meant, and why this has to be this color and why I need balloons and flowers and, drawings. But the drawings had to look a particular way as I saw in my dream. So I put this whole thing together and I thought, this is a powerful thing to actually engage young people with. And
mm,
so with this project, or with the inception of this project, it became an idea of I can actually engage young people in drawing and painting and making and understanding the direction of what I was doing. But actually, the message behind it was awesome, because not only was it going to allow them to express freely, I realized that at the very end of the project, it would bring loads of young people together, and it would bring their parents together, and it would bring community leaders together, and it would bring the police together, and it would bring politicians together. So the list just went on and on and on and on. And it got me really excited. So that became one of the things that I started in 2019, and I've continued with it. COVID got in the way, but as we speak in November, um, I'm going to be launching the kind of next stage of it. But yeah, this is just one example of some of the things that I do, or a couple of examples: the visits, the presentation, and actually getting them involved so they can get their hands dirty. But it's all the process. It's a learning, ongoing thing that teaches them and it teaches me.
and when you attend some of these colleges and schools and community venues to talk about your work, talk about your projects, the things you're doing for the community through your art, what type of reception do you get from people? Because one thing that again, for people who are more artistic you understand is that it's not necessarily, especially for visual artists
That's right.
like yourself,
Yes.
and you will obviously go a bit deeper with this, is that there is no, in a sense, there's not just one type of canvas. You are
Yeah.
the canvas. And I think
Absolutely.
that's some people don't understand or or know how to take it anyway, do they?
Yes.
They don't really get that you are, that piece. So
Absolutely.
what type of response do you get from some people who are inquisitive or just seeing you for the first time? What some of the reception that you get or reactions that you get from your visual
To,
art?
to put it simply, I usually walk into a room or into an arena, into a hall, and usually you hear this kind of a huge sigh or a sound of surprise, like type of thing. Um, and I've had people clap, although they've never met me before.
Mm,
I've had young people clap and scream, sort of clapping and just making noises of joy as if they've met me before, as if they know what I'm about to talk about, when in most cases, they may never have met me. Perhaps there was a bit of an introduction by a teacher or whatever. Um, but that's what's happened. So after the initial sense of surprise, then comes the questions, as you can imagine. Because I normally would either have, what I call my props. It can be a case, a carrier case, or it can be an umbrella, or sometimes it might be one of the people that I work with who might have an umbrella, with me, or should I say, hold an umbrella on top of my head as I walk into the space. Um, and this has happened at award ceremonies, wherever I go. In the streets, it's just more or less the same thing over and over and over again. Um, but yeah, that has always been the first reaction, and then I kind of leave it to people to want to ask whatever it is they want to ask.
mm,
I've had people ask me, are you an artist? Are you a singer? Are you a performer? Are you about to perform? The questions are loads, and it's continuous, and it's unexpected. Just when I feel like I've heard everything, I might get a question that I've never heard before. So it's sporadic. And again, I do understand that it happens because people are not used to seeing a person appear the way I do. So all of that is
mm,
completely fine. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm always happy to engage and to really help educate people in terms of how my mind works and how their mind could work.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. Do you think part of the surprised reaction,
Yes.
again, goes back to what I've experienced from people as the they the lack of understanding of what art actually is, and that
Absolutely.
art actually limitless. It doesn't have a boundary, but their view of it, again, is putting it into that narrow scope. So then they think, well, an artist must be like this or like this, and then when you turn up, they're like, like, do you know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
throws them off. And I remember we were talking before I left the
Yeah.
UK,
Yeah.
and I remember you went to one award. It was
Yeah.
an awards evening, and you came back. I think it was the next day or the day after, and I was talking to you about how it went. And you had that black. I don't know if it was a dinner jacket or a morning jacket,
Sure.
and it said up. The arrow was pointing down, or it was the other way. And you said
Absolutely.
I was getting so confused when he asked you.
Oh gosh. Yes. Yeah. I very much remember that blazer. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people don't quite understand art in itself.
Yeah.
And do you think you're continually um creating more awareness and understanding to people who are not privy to art, actually what art as an art form in its sense, as a discipline about what it actually is?
Totally, totally. I mean, again, I create a lot of curiosity. Um, and that curiosity means people ask a lot of questions. Um, and those questions always is an opportunity for me to expand and educate. And it's exactly what you said. That the surprise and the sense of, the it's all because of the limitations. That's why I have a tag that says creativity without limitations. And, it says that purposefully, it says that deliberately. And it's saying, whatever or whatever you think, I'm about to break it and I'm about to surprise you and I'm about to go beyond it. But just when you think you know what I have done and who I am, I'm also going to keep pushing that thing, going back to as you said, art doesn't have any limitations. The limitations are only the things we put in our way or in our minds to
Mm,
limit ourselves. Um,
mm,
yeah, I mean, going back to that blazer um, or that look, I remember at the award ceremony, I went to use the men's to use the loo and finishing just when I was about to get out. I remember a gentleman met me at the door and he looked at me up and down and he was like, "Oh, very interesting. You're controversial. You are very controversial." And I said, "Am I?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Look at the arrow in your jacket. It's pointing down, but it says up. It's very interesting.
mm.
You're controversial. You're controversial, but your mind is very interesting." And then he just walked off.
And he was
Right.
baffled as well. He was confused, wasn't he?
Yes. Yes, he was. He was. But that's it. Sometimes, sometimes we have to present things in a way that allows people to almost come out of the knowingness and to for a moment not
Mm,
know. And I think
mm,
sometimes it's only through this process that we get to renew people's minds,
mm,
um, or to make them see things differently. Um, and as I mentioned, I am an educator and I explain sometimes things to people because I want them to leave with a better mindset or with a greater understanding of why certain things work the way they do, especially concerning my
mm.
work. So, yeah, it's a joy to do that.
I think that's the other thing that what you've just mentioned with art and with an artist and the work you present and well you create first and then present
Yeah,
without explaining it is
yeah,
how someone views the actual piece because
yeah,
what you've just said and especially from what you said earlier about your work is to raise awareness is to
that's
provide
right.
an understanding the atrocities that happen in communities and to inspire young people
Yeah,
to step outside of their shell and outside of the box that some of them have been pigeonholed into is that
yeah,
is to get people to extend their thinking
yeah,
as well, right?
absolutely.
But they look at someone like you and then you come up with the message and again even within that there's the confusion, right? They don't think oh you're
Yeah,
going to talk about some the atrocities that are going on. They expect you to be someone who is probably a bit more looking at you visually, thinking someone who's a
yeah,
bit more about themselves, but not
yes,
understanding until you
that's right.
explain to them,
Yes,
isn't it
totally
really?
agree. Yes, and I
Mm,
think I think you've raised a very, very interesting point there, which I have thought about several times when I've been in the midst of people. That it's exactly that. It's like sometimes I can feel almost as if when I'm about to explain something that the person or the people think that I'm about to talk about maybe space and aliens or something, you know, um, or that I'm about to explain stuff in a very strange manner, using words they might not even understand, and then they've realized that my words are quite simple, straightforward, and very relative to their lives and to what's happening around us. And that also surprises them because it's like, oh, okay, what he's talking about, I can relate. I know about what he's talking about, and it really makes a lot of sense. And I like that whole process because it's not about appearing or speaking in some language that nobody understands. It's about human to human relationship and understanding. And us just, trying to go beyond what is presented to us and to know that, there are other possibilities, really. Yeah.
Do not feel like your idea has to be set. Just play around, add materials, glue onto the umbrella, do whatever you want to do. We're not looking for meaning necessarily, we're just wanting to just play. And let's just see what happens. You can keep it as simple as you want, or you can make it as complex as you want. I tend to do it the other way, where I make it complicated and then I reduce it. It seems to work better that way.
So with your visual appearance, where did that come from? When did you first start using like the visual paint and the prop within your art in terms of presenting your projects and your messages? When did that begin?
Good question. So it started originally around the year 2000. I had gone through a period of maybe, say, 9 months or 10 months, and I was creating my sort of tribal series. And the tribal works started with these strange sculptures that I made. And those sculptures looked quite African, but they were made of, bits of old wood, leaves, feathers, beans. I even, used bits of, actual real chicken heads, goat feet. So it looked really strong and visually powerful and almost kind of voodoo-y. And after I made that, I then sort of transitioned into making some paintings. And the paintings were inspired by the sculptures. So it was sort of like a continuation or like an addition to what I had started. So I made the paintings for a while. And then I thought, actually, why not add myself into the work? As in, get myself to look like one of the sculptures, So that became the third installment, if you like, of this sort of series. So I made some costumes, and went and asked my sister for her bra, which I wanted to put onto one of the costumes. And I thought it was very silly, but I found it funny. and she gave me one. So, I sold it to one of these costumes, um, and asked one of my friends to take photographs of me.
Hmm.
So he did it. And when the photographs came back and I looked at these 2, 3 costumes I had made and my facial expressions and the lighting and everything else, I remember thinking, wow, this is like, it felt as if I had arrived at something new. Like my mind had transcended where it was and it was in a different place. And this was back at university. My teachers saw um, the works, the sculptures, and the photographs of me, and they were completely amazed. And usually back at university, teachers will say to you like, oh, your work looks like this person, or it feels like, the work of that person. And I remember it was one of the few times they had nothing to say like that. It was almost as if I had arrived at something so raw and original, that they just did not know what to say. They just completely loved the creativity. And this is what they kept saying to me, that it was just unbelievable and so powerful. That was the time when this whole idea or concept of me becoming part of the work or inside the work started. And time went on, and then decided in 2009 that I had been invited to this award ceremony. By that time, I had left this whole tribal series behind and I was working on something completely different. I had been commissioned to make 7 paintings for a restaurant in a big restaurant in London. After I made the paintings, so that the scene and the paintings were set in the, I think, 16th century or 17th century. So we had a little opening for these paintings. And I decided that actually I wanted to look like one of the characters, or, these sort of English gentlemen with a top hat, and everything else. But I was going to add the African vibe in there as well. So it was this kind of eclectic look. And that became the time when my next phase of dressing up, if you like, started. So that was the first time, I was ever seen with a top hat, and all that kind of stuff, and I would do my tie in a funny way. And the blazers, started having words and stuff like that in them. And once I had done that, it appeared in the newspaper. And then I was invited to an award ceremony, and I did a different version of that look. And I remember being there and the look people gave me, at the time it was milder than what I look like now. But the look was very, very interesting. And I remember it was the comedian Richard Blackwood who was presenting the award show. So in the midst of
Yes,
about,
yeah.
yes, in the midst of about 700 people, um, they had a technical glitch on stage, and he decided to point to me and he said, "Excuse me, could you come on the stage?" So I got up and went. And it was him and Miss London, who's also a comedian, a known comedian. And they started kind of looking at me up and down and trying to sort of, figure out why I looked the way I did. And we're asking a whole bunch of questions. After that, I got more invites to other shows, other award
Yeah.
ceremonies. Sometimes it was because I had been nominated or I was winning an award. But being the type of creative that I am, every single time I had these opportunities, I would get other ideas. So I started mixing it up. I'll change the colors. And the more I did this, the more I became myself, the more opportunities
Mm,
came. Radio interviews,
mm,
TV interviews, people wanting to profile me. It was just on and on and on and on, endless. Um,
mm.
so that's how it kind of started. And
Oh,
yeah, I realize it's not an accident. It's because I'm interested in fashion. My mum was a seamstress, and I used to really go through her books, looking at fashion models and jackets and stuff for men and women and drawings, and So I do know that all of this is is a combination of all of that stuff from childhood, and how my mind has continued to develop. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, the pursuit of finding oneself, um, and to continue to find ourselves, because we're not necessarily one thing. We're many things.
Mm. Yeah, I remember seeing the top hat
Yeah,
um uh outfit, and I remember looking you up and down, and it again, it's one of those things that would, for people who are just looking in the conventional sense, will throw them off, because you had the top hat.
yeah,
I think you had some sort of face paint on, and then you had like a blazer
yeah,
with the briefcase. You had,
yeah.
like, was it like boxing trainers or
That's right.
um
Yeah, yeah. Butts and boots.
that threw people off again, because it was black, but it had white and red and blue colors on it as well.
Absolutely.
I was just thinking, people are just going to get so confused by it. But one thing I have noticed about your work,
Yes.
spending time with you in your workshop,
Yeah.
and talking with you, sometimes we will talk for hours, and leave, is the different pieces of art that you had up
Yeah.
in the in the workshop. And
Yeah.
I remember there were a couple of pieces that struck me, and you actually reminded me when I asked you to send me, just some pictures in advance to use.
Mm.
And I remember that briefcase with the pictures of the boys
Yes.
um
Yes. The murdered.
on it.
Yeah, the murdered
Yeah,
boys. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, which was really powerful.
Yeah. No, thank you.
um
I'm not the type of person who accepts limitations,
mm,
especially when it comes to creativity. And we do know that the people in history we consider the best,
mm,
or the greatest, no matter what it is, or no matter what category or area of life we're talking about, whether we're talking about footballers, you know,
mm,
whether we're talking about Maradona, Pele, or Beethoven, or Mozart, or Steve Jobs, whatever, whoever. The people we admire the most are the ones who were always willing to expand,
mm,
because they also understood that, you know, to limit oneself is, in a sense, to kind of creatively die, you
mm,
know. And, going back to what we said earlier, by this expansion, I hope other people can also draw something from it and to live by it, and to expand their own lives and to expand their own minds, So it's not even necessarily about, I'm an artist, I want to expand your mind so you can also go be an artist. It's more
yeah,
about, I'm an artist, I want to creatively expand your mind, and that spirit or that power, take it, run with it, and go do whatever it is you want with it.
mm,
But don't be limited, in your thinking, because really, it's a bit like a mirror. What you present in front of the mirror is what it reflects back to you. If
mm,
you believe that you are more than you are, if you believe you can go beyond a situation, you will do it. Or should I say, your mind will find a way to give you not only the impetus, but the power and the knowledge, and certain things will come together to make you be what you are, even if it takes
mm,
time. And that's what and how I believe nature works. And that whole
mm.
thing is important to me. I'm an example of it.
Yeah.
I just did an interview with a magazine just yesterday, And one of the questions was about my time at Central St. Martin's, where I did my foundation in art. And I gave him an example of how we were asked to use card books to build something that could fold and unfold, and then to pick a theme around this folding and unfolding. And as you can imagine, students came in with loads of cardboard under their armpit. Everybody's just bringing in stuff, scissors and knives and tapes and all of this sort of stuff. And for some reason, I was never attracted to the idea of finding cardboard. And then for maybe like 2-3 days, I couldn't understand why. But I do know that, I do not necessarily like to do what other people do. So that natural thing inside me was resisting doing what they were doing, which was to bring in loads of cardboards and that type of stuff. And then on the 4th day, something happened in my mind. And it was just one of the most beautiful experiences I've had. I thought to myself, actually, I am not going to use cardboard. I'm going to use an umbrella. Why an umbrella? Because I've always loved the shape of umbrellas. But I realized an umbrella folds and unfolds, right? So it had already solved the problem. They were going to spend a week making whatever out of card books to try to make it fold and unfold. But I went beyond the instructions and the rule, and I decided to use an umbrella. So I basically turned the umbrella upside down, and all the compartments of the umbrella, I started dividing them up, and I chose the theme of a circus. So I then started painting all the different, compartments you would see in the circus. So where the audience was, where the acrobats sit, the different machineries and different balls and whatever. Like, I created this whole scene. And then the bit of the umbrella you hold, I decided to tie some strings, from the handle back to the umbrella. And this represented the ropes, acrobats would use in doing the awesome, amazing, flips and all that kind of stuff. So the inside of the umbrella looked realistic, and you could immediately tell it was a circus. I had all these beautiful details. So the teacher comes and looks at it, and he starts clapping. And he said, you have done something quite magical here. And to be honest, I was surprised, because I remember thinking, oops, have I done what they didn't expect? Because I've not used cardboard. Now, the students, I remember coming to them, some were laughing and some looked at me thinking, you've cheated. And I said, why have I cheated? They said, well, we were asked to use card box, to make it out of card box, and it had to close and open. But, you've cheated by using an umbrella. But then the teacher or the tutors loved what I had made, although I had not used what they had asked. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't necessarily about the card box. The card box was just what they thought we could use. And because I understood the brief and knew what they wanted us to achieve, which was the opening and the closing and the theme, I went straight for the thing they wanted us to do. And that meant I had to discard the original script. So as they struggled to make, these things that moved and closed and opened, I had already solved it. And all I had to do was just spend time technically painting the stuff that existed within my circus. And that reminds me of your story of, what you said about frequency. It doesn't have to be the thing, that people know. We can come up with faster, smarter, perhaps more powerful ways of communicating. We can.
Yeah, it's stretching beyond the said boundary, isn't it? And actually thinking in a way where there is no boundary, because you're not dealing with something in a sense that fits into a system. It doesn't.
Yes.
There's no system.
No.
So you not pigeon it or fit it into a way of and I think that's the limitless boundary or the
Yeah.
limitless
Yes.
of art in itself.
Yes.
Do you think a true understanding, especially when it comes to young people, a true understanding of art in itself will really help young people with, number one, how they view life, how they approach life, and how they
Yeah.
take on challenges within life?
Most definitely. I mean, again, as I said, or as we discussed a couple of times so far, um, we know that initially art is seen as something that's supposed to be beautiful and supposed to go on the walls, supposed to be bought, and all of that kind of stuff, and that's perfectly fine. A lot of my works do hang on walls in people's homes and all over the place. But I think once we realize that through our ideas and concepts and approach, we can actually unlock something else. And that's
Mm,
something else that I'm talking about is exactly what we've been talking about, which is beyond the looking, beyond the meaning. If we can find ways of getting deep into one's mind or into their heart and to do a little unlocking, and this unlocking, if it's about, look, your idea matters. Yeah, your thoughts and your experiences that have formed these unusual, unique ideas that you might have, that it's valid.
mm,
It's valid. And therefore, do not be afraid to run with it. Um, I think that is a very, very powerful thing. And for young people, I think giving them the seed, um, we keep saying young people and old people,
mm.
giving them
True,
the seed
true.
giving them the seed to know that it's never too late to follow your ideas because your ideas have been formed by your unique experiences. And because
Mm,
your unique experiences matter and are valid, um, believe in it. Believe that it's given you something. And if it's giving you a new perspective or a new way or a new approach, then run with it because that is supposed to be your contribution or one of your contributions to the world or to existence. And again, I think that freedom and that unlocking is the thing that leads people to achieving greatness. Because when you look around life, we know what we know, and certain things have been done. And the world is always looking for newer ways to approach the future. So for young
mm,
people, sowing the seed and letting them know that do not be afraid, right? Your ideas and whatever is going through your mind or has gone through your mind, like wake it up and be willing to travel with it because it's valid, it's important, it's a contributing factor to the world. And, it can potentially open up new doors to something else we do not know about. I think
mm,
it's an incredible thing that we should never give up on and to always try to do, you know,
mm,
because again, the more people are able to find themselves and to go with that flow, the happier they become and the more the better and the greater, if you like, citizens of the world they become in
mm.
terms of what's possible and what they can contribute to, like we said earlier, solutions. Um, yeah, it's about
Yeah.
inventiveness, just follow,
Yeah.
follow, follow that thing because it's important.
Yeah. No, no, definitely. You mentioned two words there that were quite impactful. Uh uh, Validation or validity and
Yeah,
also contribution.
absolutely.
Do you think sometimes and I know we've been talking a lot about young people
Sure.
as well, but but yes, as you've mentioned just before,
Mm.
older people as well. Do
Yeah.
you think that part of the restrictions is because people feel that their contribution isn't valid and they don't understand
Yes.
um, impactfulness that their contribution can have. So again, they restrict themselves, even when they move within the space of creating art, they
Yes.
still consciously think, oh, well, it won't be valid anyway. It's just going to be another, do you know what I mean? Because people think that they have to do things and it has to have the biggest impact on a grand scale. But earlier you mentioned about
Yeah.
continuing working towards, the bigger picture. Do you think that's
That's it.
part of why is because number one, they don't feel that their contribution in a sense will be valid?
Yes. That's a simple answer, and I'll expand a little bit on this. I totally agree that a lot of people do definitely feel that what they have isn't valid. And a big part of that reason is because the thing that they might hold dear to them, again, this can be an idea or a new creation or whatever. If it's something that is moving things forward,
Mm,
um, and a lot of times, stuff that moves life forward or creations forward, because we're talking about artistic stuff. So let's say the things that move creativity forward are often unusual, and they have to be unusual um, because that in itself is a sign to say that it's not necessarily been explored in the way once made it
mm,
or once presented or whatever. And I think when we hold ideas that do not have a predecessor, if I can call it, um, or does not necessarily in a clear way combine things that have gone before, we get scared. We get scared because we're like, oops, how am I going to explain this to people? How will they understand? They might think I'm crazy. They might think, I'm loopy because, how do I explain this? And let's face it, not everything can be explained. Sometimes we create or make first and then the meaning comes after.
mm,
And I think these are all psychological factors which stop a lot of people, um, which stopped me once upon a time,
mm,
um, from really introducing ourselves through the things we think, the things we think of, the things we make, the things we build.
mm,
Um, so going back to your question, absolutely, it's definitely a huge factor. That stops people from feeling like, because we always feel like stuff has to be explained, and I
mm,
think the whole concept of explaining certain things is a bit overrated.
mm,
We don't have to always explain stuff. Not
mm,
everything has a description or has an immediate meaning. It doesn't have to.
mm,
We have to accept the process of sometimes I make now, or I think now, or I act now, and the meaning comes later. Of
yeah,
course, we have boundaries within this. We do not want to sometimes go too far to hurt ourselves or to create problems
mm,
that would need to be solved later. But we need that freedom to just understand that certain things do not need to be explained and they can just be what they are. Um,
mm,
but yes, I definitely think that whole process, when it's done in the other way, in the unusual way, does stop people from um,
mm.
feeling like they're valid. Totally. Certain things um, are from a place that is just a place that is not covered in words, you know,
Mm,
because we have words and we have feelings, for example, right? I've made work that has been started or that has started out of just a feeling, and I did not know what the feeling meant. I just made it
mm,
with this belief that later the meaning would come to me, and it usually does,
mm,
But I have to be free enough to also experiment in that way. and to trust. And I think that is another big word here, trust. We have to
Mm.
trust the process, as they say. We have to
My
trust
mum,
that the thing. Oh yeah, she's right. We have to trust that, the thing that is given the inspiration or the prompt, does
mm,
not just give and disappear. It will
mm,
return once we have fulfilled our part, and it will communicate the explanation or the meaning behind the thing, behind the instruction.
mm,
You know,
mm. Yeah,
um, yeah,
yeah. Do you know? Because this is one reason why I wanted to talk to you, is to delve into the depths of um art in itself, and not just
yeah,
visual art, but art in itself. And I was so thankful when I studied sound engineering and understood about frequency and about
yes,
balancing frequency. Because so many people that I've come across, when you talk to them about just art, whether it's visual art, dance, drama,
yes,
there's a deep lack of understanding, as we
mm,
mentioned earlier, about what art is and how we operate as humans. And
yeah,
us as humans operate within frequencies, right?
that's right.
And that
Yes,
certain frequencies are played,
yes,
it strikes a chord with your soul. This is why
yeah,
people dance, because the
yeah,
frequency, the vibrations
yes,
move you, you
that's
know,
right.
motivate you to move. And and that's what people are not understanding. And this is what
Yeah,
I say about the depth of art in
yeah,
itself. It's a
yeah,
given thing. There's no
that's
way of
right.
explaining it,
No,
which is why it's
no, that's
me.
right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
That's right.
This,
Yeah,
this is people are, again, they're
yeah,
restricted in their,
of course,
they can't think
of course.
outside that box they've been conditioned to think
Yeah,
within.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
'cause
yeah,
damn,
yeah. Conditioned is such a big word. It's such a big word.
mm,
We you know, even as free as I try to be, there are certain things when I'm about to start, that initial restrictive way of thinking kicks in.
mm,
Um, the human, the fresh human, the things that I've been learning from childhood does kick in. And
mm,
then I have to stop myself and then remind myself, you are free. You
mm,
are a free human being. It's okay. You are free. Let it out. Just let it out.
mm,
And then I let it out, against that initial feeling. Because let's not forget, we are constantly fighting against the program, the
mm,
conditioning, as you mentioned. And if you have been conditioned since you were born all the way to, say, age 17, 18, all the way upwards, that's a lot of undoing to do.
mm,
That is a hell of a lot of undoing, um, unmasking, whatever word we want to use. And so it makes sense that, we constantly move back and forth and sometimes trap ourselves unknowingly. It just makes
mm,
sense. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, it's a powerful thing of understanding,
Yeah.
in a sense, the world system,
That's right.
because create, um, how can I put it? I don't want to use the term robot, but it's robotic to a sense.
Yeah.
Robotic thinkers,
Yeah. Yes. Repetitive
because
thinking.
yeah, you condition them to operate within the system. But again, when
Absolutely.
there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of people across the world who are divergent in their thinking, that
Yes.
there's something right about this. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? There's just something that doesn't
Absolutely.
feel right. That's when
Yes.
you get marginalized in a way that there's something wrong with you. Like
Yes.
there's something deeply
Yeah.
wrong with you. And that's
That's
the
it.
problem, because into the system that has been
Yes.
created to keep in.
Of
But
course.
you go back to, if God is limitless, then why would we be limited? Do you know what I'm
Well,
saying?
that's it.
That's the thing that I always
That's it.
struggle to
Yes.
understand. But you
That's
know,
it.
um,
Yes.
mm,
As
I just
yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna
I got
say. I think there's a thing I read some time ago, that speaks of I think somebody had asked the artist Picasso why he had created in many styles or whatever, and he said, God created, I think, the goat and then the chicken and then the horse or whatever. I'm paraphrasing here, but he was just trying to get over the idea that the horse is a different style, right, and has a whole different meaning to it, and the chicken is completely different. The horse has 4 legs, as an example. The chicken has 2 or 2 hands. And then, you look at a fish, it swims in water. So it's just that idea that whatever whatever you create, if only you will allow yourself, if it's important to you, you can create the next thing. And it doesn't have to be a repeat of the previous, you know? Yeah, but again, as we've been saying many times, it's about the unlocking and the understanding of this. Because without understanding, it ain't happening. Nobody's moving forward. Yeah,
for real. I wanted to move on to ask you about something. So I remember reading in when you sent me some things in advance, that publication, and it was a term that you, the statement that you said, money doesn't make the world go round, art does.
Yes, that's right.
What was meant by that?
It simply means that do not look at money first as the reason for making art. But make the art first, and then the money comes after. It's also about the idea of what's meaningful, and the process that one goes through in making the art is more meaningful and a greater reward than the money that comes at the end of it when, for example, we've sold it. I do a lot of writing. I don't think I present enough of it, to be honest with you. But I wrote something else that said something along the lines of, the famous quote of the pen is mightier than the sword. That's right. So I made another one as a sort of continuum of that said, the paintbrush is mightier than the pen. And it's just, again, a little bit similar to this statement of, money doesn't make the world go, round, art does. It's saying that expression and the thing that allows us to express is greater, because it's about giving of yourself to the process, to the thing that you're making. And that you can't beat.
Yeah, I would agree. There's so much within art that is misunderstood, not communicated enough.
That's
but
right.
as we've said, some things cannot be communicated.
No.
But just move us on, because there's another area that I just wanted to explore with you,
Yes.
which is something that I have realized throughout my whole life, and many other people have as well, is the holistic value of art and what it plays in the life of someone.
Sure.
It's healing, you could feel so sad, and that's why I love, one reason why I moved into the sphere of music within my art is because you can feel so sad, but then hear a piece of musical work, and it will absolutely change your mood. Or you could crazy music, and all of a sudden you want to start fighting. You get what? But I know that's not more in a holistic sense, but just the power that art plays within the healing area of one's life. What are some of the things that you've experienced through your art, but through your own journey of seeing pieces of work that have actually brought, healing and even inspiration to
Yeah,
yourself?
yeah, I love this topic. And yeah, another great question from you. I'll give two very specific examples of this. So I remember being age 16 at school, and I had made my Elijah painting. So my Elijah painting is it's a Bible story, or the painting was inspired by the Bible story of Elijah, whom God took in a chariot of fire, and it was my interpretation of it. But anyway, so this was done in a very realistic, naturalistic type of way, inspired by the Renaissance, artists like Raphael and Leonardo and all of these other great artists, and also the Dutch artist Rembrandt. And I remember the first presentation of this. One of my teachers stood in front of it, and she just kept staring at it, and I'll never forget this. And she just kept, getting closer and closer to the painting, and she was like, "How did you paint that cloud and make it feel like it's so infinite beyond this board?" And she said, "I just want to cry. It's like, I don't understand how the hell you did this, but I just want to cry because there's something about the infiniteness of the way you've painted the clouds, and it doesn't seem to end with the canvas. It just seems to keep going on." And she's like, "I don't
Mm,
understand what it is that's inside your eyes and your mind that just makes you do this." She's like,
mm,
I just want to cry. I just want to cry." And she was one of two teachers who reacted this way to this painting. Now, because I was 16, I didn't probably understand the weight of what they were saying to
mm,
me. Of course, I literally understood that it had affected them, but I didn't really, you know, allow myself to go deep in terms of what they were talking about. Um, so that's example number one, and I'll give another example. So when I started my anti-knife crime project, which started in
mm,
2019 and it has toured in different places. When people walk into the space, it's called Reclaim. When people walk into this space where Reclaim has been set up, there is sound, there is the visual as to what you see, there are flowers. Again, as you mentioned earlier, it looks like a memorial scene, right? And so it's been designed to just attack your senses, whether what you see, what you smell, what you hear, everything becomes alive in that space. And I've had people walk away saying to me, so what we do is I have a couple of people who record people's reactions, and people's feedback. And
mm,
it's been awesome because when you see photographs of it, because it appears to be, or appears to look like a memorial scene, the instant relation or the thing that you might think of is that, oh my God, this looks shocking and it's really sad because, people have died and da 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 da. But when you're in that space, yes, you feel that, but that's juxtaposed with a sense of real hope because of the
mm,
words and the images and the way it's encouraging us to see life as something that is truly precious. Saying to people, to gangs, young people, please put down that knife and find a way to reconcile your differences. So
mm,
people have walked out of this installation either crying out of sadness, and some people have said this, you know, I remember the first time we set it up in 2019, the first presentation, we had several people saying it was one of the most powerful things they had ever experienced. And I can promise you, this is nothing that I ever expected. It has, obviously, I have constructed the whole thing quite carefully according to this dream that I initially had, and have thought about all the different elements and how it affects us psychologically and emotionally. And it was never meant to create just a space of sadness without the courage and without the sense of hope and without the sense of we can do something about this. So the way it has affected people and continue to affect people um, has been incredible. And it's inspired so many people to go away. And what's been so beautiful about it is when I get people saying, please, Eugene, the next time you are putting this thing together, can I come help? Can I be a volunteer? Can I help arrange the flowers? Can I put up the drawings? Can
Mm.
I just want to be part of this. I just want to be part of this because I feel like, you have found a way to just speak to people, and it's so deep. It's doing something. I just want to be part of this. I want to be part of this movement, this message. So those are just two examples to just, that just
Mm.
comes to my
It's
mind immediately.
it's true, isn't it, with that saying that a picture paint 1,000 words. It's
That's right.
just something that cannot be expressed, and then the soul
Yes.
then comes alive. It has
Yeah.
one of two react, either react
That's
all
right.
three. It reacts negatively towards it, maybe because it
Yeah.
doesn't understand, or it
Of
reacts
course.
positive, healing,
Yeah.
or you're in the
Indifference.
middle. You're just out. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the powerfulness. I think art plays, and yeah, I agree. I think art does make the world go round, but I do think it comes when you have an understanding of what art really, truly is. Mm,
See, that's why the word understanding is one of my favorite words.
mm,
I just feel like it's packed with so much, you know.
yeah.
Um, even our talents, anybody you call talented or gifted or whatever, is because they have been either born with the understanding or they have skilled up enough to have created the understanding.
Mm,
It all comes back to that word and that meaning, like what you
mm,
have gathered and what it's given back to you. You know,
mm,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. 100% would agree. Well, well, thanks so much, Eugene, for your time
my
today.
pleasure.
It's been an amazing conversation. We'll definitely have to
Yes,
get you back. There are a few
yes,
other things that I would delve in a lot deeper around the
no
specifics
problem. Yeah,
of art. But one thing that we always do here on
yes,
the Kaleidoscope Mind is the guest who we have, we ask the guest to leave us
yes,
with some that's in their mind, whether it's a quote, whether it's words of wisdom, whether it's
mm,
advice or guidance, whether it's something
mm,
that you feel that we should take to
yeah,
ponder and think about further.
yeah,
Um,
yes.
we like to extend that. So I'd leave it to you to leave us with something that you think we should continue to think and ponder about from your mind.
Yes, I would say that because of what we have specifically been talking about today, um, I want to pick on something we already said and to expand it a little bit more, which is simply that, no matter what our experiences have been, whether negative or positive, and especially those who have struggled, coming up and in pursuing what they want to do, um, that your experiences and sometimes the pain we go through um, can all be turned into something truly powerful and meaningful if you turn it inward and use it. So I want to really encourage your audience or anybody who's going to watch this to just know that what you have is valid, what you have does matter, and also know that the very thing that has made you who you are is altogether the very thing that is needed in the world, especially when it's expressed through your unique ideas or your unique approach. Um, I'll just add something else here. I was talking to somebody recently and I said, and this is a bit of a strange idea. Even I am trying to fully understand what I'm about to say, but it just came to me and I truly believe it. That the problems that exist in the world, the things that are looking for um, solutions, exist because the people who are supposed to solve those problems or supposed to contribute to those issues have not found themselves. So therefore, the issues and the problems linger. So the more we find ourselves and the more we try to get back onto our path via our experiences and what it's given us, the more we will be able to contribute to the world and solve the problems and the issues that are around us. And this is why I truly believe ultimately it's about finding ourselves and empowering ourselves through our own voice. Obviously in collaboration with other people, we keep learning, we keep expanding, but find your voice. And when you find it, try to run with it because it's needed. It's needed in this world. You are just a nobody. Never believe you're not a nobody because, perhaps things have been negative or you've struggled. Those things can be turned inward or upside down, and it can be used as a powerful weapon for good, to help humanity. And I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Eugene, thanks so much, and it's been a pleasure and really good to see you again, man. It's been far too long.
I know. Thanks.